Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 96th episode of the Atlas Society Asks. My name is Jennifer Anju Grossman. My friends call me Jag. I'm the CEO of the Atlas Society. We're the leading nonprofit organization introducing young people to the ideas of Ayn Rand in fun, creative ways like our graphic novels and animated videos. Today, we are joined by Peter Diamandis, a man who needs no introduction, but before I even get to that, I want to remind all of you who are watching us on Zoom, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, use the comment section, type in your questions, keep them short, and we will get to as many of them as we can. So as founder of the XPRIZE Foundation, Peter Diamandis has worked tirelessly to harness the competitive spirit to fund and solve global challenges, from space exploration to carbon removal, a prize recently funded by Elon Musk. In addition to founding several ventures in space tourism, communication, and the medical innovation space, and of course, funding many more through his bold capital partners, Diamandis is the co-founder of the Singularity University, out of which he started Abundance 360, his year-round mastermind and executive program. Peter is the New York Times best-selling author of 4 books. Of course, there is Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. There is Bold, How to Go Big, Create Wealth, and Impact the World. There is, this is, I think, my personal favorite, The Future is Faster Than You Think. Highly recommend, especially the Audible is very good. And this latest one that he co-authored with Rob Hariri and Tony Robbins, Life Force, How New Breakthroughs in Precision Medicine Can Transform the Quality of Your Life and Those You Love. Peter's entrepreneurial accomplishments, his audacity, and his data-driven optimism made him the natural choice to receive the Atlas Society's Lifetime Achievement Award in the fall of 2020, where he also courageously came out to support us at a time when most people were not doing events. He's also the subject of one of our most popular Draw My Life videos. My name is Peter Diamandis. So Peter, welcome. Thank you.
A pleasure to be here. First of all, it's a pleasure to spend time with you and your brilliance, and thank you for that. And second, to talk about the greatest power in the universe, the power of entrepreneurship, capitalism, and just the belief that you can change the world, because we can, and ultimately make the world a better place in the process.
Yeah, and I think it's that power of mindset, which is so critical and so pivotal, and we're going to get to that, because you can have all of the IQ points, you can have all of the connections, but as we saw, I mean, today is actually March 16th. It's the 2-year anniversary of the 2 year of 2 years of when the lockdowns were imposed here in the United States, and of course many places around the world. And talking about mindset, it was a time of real fear. It was a time of despair and loneliness and isolation. So, not to minimize the devastation and the suffering, you were able to help so many. Being a part of your Abundance 360 community was really a lifeline for me. And the message that you chose to put out there early and aggressively was, this is the worst of times, but it's also the best of times. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how, looking back, what are some of the good things that came out of the difficult experience in the past 2 years?
So first of all, to hit the point you made, your mindset is the most important thing you have, right? It is, if you look at the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet, the most successful leaders on the planet, and you said, what enabled them? Was it the capital they had? Was it the technology they had? Or was it their mindset? I would say hands down, it's their mindset. You could take away everything from them, And if they had kept their mindset, they would rebuild some significant portion of whatever was taken away. And so I think one of the things we don't do, and this is what I found so incredibly powerful about, Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead and a multitude of books that I had a chance to devour and enjoy, was they shaped your mindset. Your mindset is the most precious thing you have. And if that's the truth, the question is, where do you get your mindset? Is it who you happen to hang out with? Was it who happened to be your teacher, who happened to be your parents or your siblings? Because that's typically it. And if our mindset's the most important thing we have, we should be actively asking the question, what mindset do I want? And how am I going to shape it? And I think, in the Randian universe, that was one of the most important elements. Like, I want this mindset, and I'm going to shape it by reading these stories and embodying these characters. Now, when COVID hit 2 years ago, what was clear to me was it was beyond a SARS-CoV-2 viral pandemic. It was a pandemic of fear, because everybody had no idea what was going on and the markets were crashing. And, I, like everyone else, was like, where am I going to get some disinfectant soap or whatever the case might be? But what was not obvious, and what I started writing about, and I think what you're referring to, is this event, this disaster, this unique societal situation is a clarion call reaching out to millions of scientists and physicians and nurses and engineers, not just millions, tens of millions out there. And while we see the immediate challenge, what we don't see is the echoes of people refocusing their time, refocusing their energy, refocusing their capital. And what then happened months later, a tsunami of solutions coming in, right? So whether it was masks or ventilators or vaccines, going from an idea to, we went from receiving the RNA sequence of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in January, to having a vaccine, at least by Moderna, designed within 24 hours. And then within a year, it was put into production and receiving emergency use authorization, which is stunning. For those who don't know how long this normally takes, it can be a 5 to 10 year journey. And it was stunning how fast it went. So I think the human race, when it needs to, can really focus. And sometimes we need an existential threat. I keep praying for an asteroid to be coming straight at us, but with, a few years notice. I'd like the notice period part there. And so we do really well when we need to. We're not caught up in the bullshit of politics and blaming other individuals.
Yeah, I mean, also there was the fact that there was an unprecedented infusion of capital, of investment in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The White House and Congress and private investors, just stood up and said, this is important to do. And, we can think about this from many different ways. One of the pandemics out there right now is lack of education or human aging. I like to think of aging as a disease that we can stop, and potentially reverse. And this about me, Jag. I say the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. I want to become a billionaire, help a billion people, and that's a beautiful coincidence of drives.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that some of the biggest opportunities are the rising billion. You talk about all of the unbanked, the people that are in Africa, that are in China and India, that are not yet really in the commercial consuming economy, and that it's in your rational self-interest to find a way to meet their needs, and it'll make you a very wealthy person.
Yeah, I think so, in such a important way. It used to be that where you were born, color of your skin, your gender determined everything. You know, if you were born in the wrong village, there was no library, there were no books, there was no school, there was an oppressive government, you were screwed, didn't matter how brilliant you are. And today we're living in a world where, you know, when I talk about abundance, one of the books that you held up, one of the key phrases I wrote that I love is, yes, thank you, Vanna. One of the key phrases I like to say is abundance is not about creating a world of luxury. It's about creating a world of possibility, right? It's where every man, woman, and child has the ability to gain access to all the world's information, which we do for free. You know, massive computational power, access to AI on the cloud, access to all the entertainment and even educational content you could want. It's amazing. We're living during the most amazing time ever in human history.
So going back to my Vanna role here, but one of the things that struck me was how you described your first three books, Abundance, Bold, and The Future is Faster Than You Think. You described them as the exponential mindset trilogy.
Yeah.
So in what ways do they tell different parts of the same kind of overarching narrative?
Sure. So abundance was a realization that came out of the early days of Singularity University. And it was the idea that technology is a force that takes whatever was scarce and makes it abundant over and over and over again. I'll give you a few examples, right? So we used to kill whales on the ocean to get whale oil to light our nights. Then we ravaged mountainsides to get coal. Then we drilled kilometers under the ocean floor. Today, we're living in a world that is bathed in 8,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species in a year. 1 hour of sunlight gives us all the energy that the human species needs for a year. It's incredible. It's there, it's just not in a usable form. But that's what technology is doing. It's in the efficiency of solar cells and battery and other storage mechanisms. Now we've got fusion coming. So we're heading towards a massive squanderable abundance of energy. What would you think of as more scarce than a perfect, 6, 7, 8, 10 carat diamond? Well, it turns out that technology can make those perfect diamonds, not a simulacrum, actual diamonds without perfect, in absolutely perfect. There's a company called the Diamond Foundry that a friend runs, that in one end of a machine comes methane, water, electricity, out the other end comes perfect diamonds. And so this is true for food, water, healthcare, education. All of these fields are going to become more abundant, meaning they'll be digitized, they'll be dematerialized, they'll be demonetized and democratized. So that was abundance. It's an ethos that we're truly uplifting society and have the ability to uplift society. Bold was a playbook. It was written as a playbook for entrepreneurs. Like, all these technologies are making you incredibly capable. What do you want to do with it? And thank you. And it was, for me, the best thing about it is I've had thousands of entrepreneurs in person or emails or conversations say that the book inspired them and gave them a means to implement. And a lot of it is helping people connect with their massive transformative purpose, your MTP. Like, why do you exist on the planet? What are you here? What's the impact you're going to have? And then what are your moonshots? What do you want to do with your intellect, your capital, your mindset, your relationships? It's great to wake up in the morning and have a passion and a purpose that makes your future bigger than your past, right? I think that's one of the most important things, especially in my conversations around age reversal. And then the future is faster than you think. It was just like, holy shit, it's moving fast. We're seeing an acceleration of the rate of acceleration. And in that story, in that book, I look at 10 industries and how they're going to be reinvented. My favorite industry that is broken, needs to be reinvented, is like insurance. Like, fire insurance pays you after your house burns down, right? Life insurance pays your next of kin after you're dead. Health insurance pays after you've gotten ill. So let's flip those models to having insurance actually prevent those maladies from occurring in the first place. So that's a lot of some of the things I'm working on now.
Yes, and so we're also going to put those links to the books in all of the social media feeds, but also the link to the Abundance 360 community, because as I mentioned, being a part of that in 2020 really helped me. And you have an opportunity to actually talk to some of the people, like the guys that founded Lemonade, which is a very innovative company, and a
Insurance
whole
company,
kind of paradigm shift in how to approach risk mitigation. But for those who aren't as familiar with these terms, maybe we can personalize it.
Sure.
If you could share with the audience what your MTP, your massively transformative purpose, and your moonshot.
Sure. So first of all, in a massive transformative purpose is something that can be all-consuming, and it really needs to be something that you own and that you're proud of and that you share with your family and friends, and people know who you are. And it doesn't have to be for your entire life, but it should be something that you're going to stick with for some period of time. And so my current MTP is to inspire and guide entrepreneurs to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for humanity. So I get my kicks out of helping entrepreneurs and really saying, you can go 10 times bigger than you are, that, what you're doing is extraordinary, but helping them see how they can create hope, which I think humans fundamentally need, a compelling future so people see their future bigger than their past, and finally, an abundant future wherein people are seeing a bigger opportunity for themselves. And so, my moonshots have been multiple, and I typically am working on one or two for periods of time. My first moonshot was opening up private spaceflight, and did that with the Ansari XPRIZE and our $10 million competition there. And then
just to interrupt for a second, not your book, but another one. This is the story of it, which it's Julian Guthrie's How to Make a Spaceship. It's kind of as close to a biography of Peter as you can get, but it also kind of tells the behind the scenes.
I was so proud of that book. Julian,
it's really great.
Did a beautiful job, and tells the behind the scenes story of this epic 8-year journey to fund this crazy $10 million prize, and the multiple pitfalls and actually having it won and launching the space industry. Anyway, my moonshots today focused very much on age reversal, and it's, can I bring to bear the resources and the capabilities to help reverse the human age 20 years. Now, my first and foremost is I want to add 20 or 30 healthy years on your life. But in addition to that, can we get you from 80 to 60 or 60 to 40, right? And that is a conversation for the first time ever is sanely being had. And people are beginning to get excited about that. And it's huge. Interesting, a study done out of Oxford and London School of Business, I think Harvard as well, was said for every single year of life, healthy life added to the global economy is worth $38 trillion. So, I think adding the healthy years to people's lives globally uplifts society. And so anyway, that for me is super exciting.
So we're going to get two questions. I can see them piling up, and we are going to get to them. But I have just a couple of more. Some that I think that would be helpful in terms of explaining some of these concepts. Sure. In the Abundance 360 community and in your books, you talk about emerging technologies that demonetize, dematerialize, and democratize. And I have to admit, I still sometimes struggle with those concepts. And so maybe some examples for the uninitiated.
Yeah, happily. So whenever you digitize something, the story goes back to the circa 1996, when a guy named Steven Sasson at Kodak Labs came up with the first digital camera. And the first digital camera didn't use film, didn't use film development. It basically was a early version of the cameras we have today. But this one took 0.01 megapixel images, and the images were recorded on a tape drive. When he showed this to the board of Kodak, they said, "You're crazy. That's a toy for kids. We make beautiful high resolution images." And they ignored the digital camera concept. They had the first mover advantage, the patents, everything. And Kodak basically did not develop the technology. It eventually was developed, and some 20 plus years later drove them into bankruptcy when the digital camera basically got rid of most of all film and film cameras. So when you digitize something, you dematerialize it. So on my cell phone, I don't have a physical camera, I have a dematerialized camera. I also have a dematerialized GPS and video camera and books and everything. Anything becomes ones and zeros becomes dematerialized. And when you do that, the cost of replicating something or transmitting something that's ones and zeros is effectively zero, so it's demonetized. And once it's demonetized, it's available to everyone on the planet with a smart device, and then it's democratized. So we have, as many handsets as humans on the planet today. And, a child in the middle of Tanzania with a feature phone or a smartphone has access to all the world's knowledge, more than the president of a country did 30 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, and access to huge amount of educational content and health content. So it really is when I talk about the rising billion, it's the billion plus individuals being empowered by these technologies and ultimately making the world a much safer place and a much better place.
And is it the scale of the democratized market that makes up for, let's say, whatever?
The demonetization.
That's I think maybe where I was getting tripped.
Yeah. So when you demonetize something, for sure, what you're effectively doing is you're killing the revenues on that product. What makes up for it are two factors. The smaller factor is the democratization. The bigger factor is business models. It's reinventing the business models that are now enabled on top of that very low cost. So, ultimately, if you can take what you've built as an entrepreneur and turn it into a platform where other folks can make money on top of what you're doing, for me, that's one of the most powerful things you can do. The number of companies that are built on top of digital photography for photo sharing apps or whatever the case might be are massive, much larger than the original market for printing film. The challenge becomes that the company that's being disrupted rarely is the company that sees the promised land, because they're too stuck focused on what they're losing versus on what's now possible.
All right, we're not going to get a chance to cover all of the many technologies and very exciting companies that you talked about, particularly in the future is faster than you think. But I did want to talk about one, because at our most recent gala, we used a flying Tesla as a narrative vehicle to give our guests a tour of all the things that the Atlas Society was doing. And we chose it kind of tongue in cheek, in part because our honoree last year, Peter Thiel, had 9 years ago, famously complained, we wanted flying cars, instead we got 140 characters. But in the future is faster than you think, you actually use the case of flying cars to illustrate a point about how converging technologies are leading to new breakthroughs. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what's going on there.
So I opened the story with that, with a conference I was keynoting here in LA it was called Uber Elevate. This was Uber's flying car division that a friend of mine was running. And so it used to be, so when I talk about exponential technologies, what I'm talking about is massive increase in computation. Sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, augmented virtual reality, blockchain. You know, you can go into nanotechnology and quantum computers and other, but it's a list of technologies that as the amount of computer power is increasing, the power of these technologies are increasing as well. And it used to be that you could be an expert in any one or two of those. And that was enough to differentiate you as an entrepreneur or as a company. But that's not the case anymore. Today, what the real action is the convergence of 2, 3, 4, or more of these coming together. And as these technologies are coming together, they're enabling brand new business models. And so the eVTOL stands for electric vertical takeoff or landing vehicles, also known as flying cars, are a beautiful example of these converging technologies. What's converging? New material sciences that make them lighter. What's called the direct electric propulsion, DEP, which is the electric motors making these possible. Again, that's material science. That's also sensors. It's also the AI for controlling these multi-copters so that you're stable. And if something goes wrong, you have lots of graceful abort opportunities. You've got GPS, of course. You've got high bandwidth network communications. And all of these things coming together create these new business models. And the business model here is, rather than owning a flying car, it's a Uberized version where it's on demand. So Jag, I live in Santa Monica. You're in Malibu?
I am. I could be there in 5 minutes if I had a flying car.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So we had the last couple events at Calamigos,
right?
Also known as Malibu Cafe. I love that place. Garrett Gerson, who owns it's a dear friend. And when I go there for the weekend, it'll take me sometimes 45 minutes to an hour to get there. But if there's something on the PCH that hits, traffic can be dead and you're stuck. And you've been there, done that, right? Of
course.
And so, but I'm a pilot.
Shocking.
When I fly out of Santa Monica, I'm, like you said, I'm over Calamigos or over Malibu in 5 minutes. And so all of a sudden, what's interesting is that these flying cars are going to reinvent business models and markets. So the old adage, location, location, location. If all of a sudden Calamigos or Topanga or Malibu is 5 minutes away and not 45 minutes or an hour away, it changes my desirability and therefore the relevant, real estate value.
All right, we are going to get to these questions, but I just had to ask you a couple more because as a writer, someone who I guess my massively transformative purpose would be to spread the message of course, the great writer Ayn Rand and her characters and her stories and their themes. You, in your book, this last book, you dedicate it to all those who have mentored and coached me during my life. And when we did your Draw My Life video and we encapsulated your life story down into 3 minutes, I was just really touched by the relationship that you had with your parents, which is clearly a very close one, but also there were some, divergences, I guess, because, what you wanted to do, and there was just, no stopping you and what your parents wanted you to do. I do think you came to an interesting and probably very productive compromise, but you dedicate the monuments, you dedicate it to your parents. So
yeah,
what?
I grew up. My parents were both immigrants from Greece, from the island of Lesbos, and I grew up in a family where it was expected I'd become a doctor because my father was an OBGYN, a physician. My mom could have been, she ran his office. And I was enamored by space. It was Apollo and that scientific documentary called Star Trek that, showed me where the future was going. And that was everything for me. And during the day in conversation with my parents or when I was in school, I was going to be a doctor, but at night, my own secret desire is I was going to go into space. And so, many years ago, I wrote something called Peter's Laws that you've seen. And one of them was given a choice, take both. And so I pursued both of those as my desires, and focused on space for 30 years, have come back to medicine, obviously through my investments in the companies I'm building in longevity and healthcare. But yeah, no, there's a lot of incredible people who have mentored me from, I include Ayn Rand as a mentor in her writings. Just a list of men and women who help shape the way I think. And it really was important for me to realize the gifts I got from each of them.
Well, this audience in particular would, for those who didn't go to the gala or watch it online, maybe you just share, because it's a really interesting story how you got introduced to Ayn Rand and the role
absolutely.
that the book played, particularly on the first flight.
Yeah, so I was, when I was at MIT as an undergrad, I started a space organization called Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, SEDS. A few years later, Jeff Bezos would become the president of the Princeton chapter, which is how I met him. And I was hanging out with a group of friends in DC, and I had one friend, Morris Hornick, come up to me and said, I have a very important book you have to read. And I was like, okay. And he said, but you can't read it yet. You have to read another book by the same author first. So he had me read Fountainhead first, and which I immensely enjoyed. And then he had me read Atlas Shrugged. And Atlas Shrugged became sort of my touchstone, which I would read every couple of years just to reground myself and refocus myself. And I probably read it, I don't know, 6 or 7 times over the years. And when it came time for the original Ansari XPRIZE for spaceflight, which occurred in 2004, Burt Rutan had built this ship and was vying for the $10 million prize we had. Burt very kindly allowed myself and the XPRIZE to put some ballast weight on the ship to go into space. And so the question is, what was I going to put on Spaceship 1 on this historic trip? And I ended up putting 2 books. One book was The Spirit of St. Louis, which was Lindbergh's autobiography. That was the causative drive. Actually 3 books. I'm sorry. The Spirit of St. Louis by Lindbergh. The second one was one of my favorite science fiction authors, and it was The Man Who Sold the Moon by Robert Heinlein. And then the third was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And those were my way of saying what was important to me.
All right. Well, we'll take a few questions now. James the Archon on Instagram is asking about, do you think we'll have a colony on the moon, if not Mars, by 2050? Or any thoughts that you have about the futures of space colonization? So
first and foremost, I put the probability high, but not from government efforts. I think it is going to be Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and private entrepreneurs who are going to enable this. I don't think governments have the risk appetite or congressional funding bodies have the budget appetite. Starship, which is under development right now, is an extraordinary vehicle. Like I said, I've known Elon for 22, 23 years, and it is his MTP to make humanity multiplanetary species, and he will spend every dollar he has to make that happen. So Starship is hopefully be operational within the next year, and I can imagine it landing on the moon in the next 2 to 3 years. It's not, once it's in orbit, the ability for it to go and do a lunar landing mission is not that much more difficult. So his original goals were 2024. Maybe that's optimistic. Maybe it's 25 or 26. But that vehicle is able to bring a sizable down mass with it, including people and return. So it's going to be the workhorse. It's going to be the equivalent of the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And then Mars, not too far behind that. Can we see it by 2050? 1,000%. By 2040, most probably 2035. I hope so.
All right. Okay. Anna Wakeman on Facebook is asking, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to the anti-aging movement?
So I think the biggest obstacle is people not believing it's possible, having a stigma associated with it. I mean, clearly anti-aging, and I don't like the term anti-aging, I'm more age reversal or longevity, but it pokes a stick into a lot of challenges. The institution of retirement, the institution of marriage, the institution of religions. If till death do us part means 100 years, it's going to be it's going to be a challenge for sure.
Yeah, well, wonder how we'll disrupt. We'll have to maybe go back to a Heinlein model.
Yes, have a good with me.
Okay, let's see. Aurelian GT on Instagram asks, technology is advancing, yes. Doesn't it seem like we're entering a post-scarcity era where government policies have made it harder for goods to get to people? I'm sure I understand that.
So let's see, post-scarcity means, is abundance. It's like things are no longer scarce. And we have to realize how incredible the world is that we can get, ripe fruits any time of the year, almost any place on the planet. Government, I think anytime there's a problem, I don't care if it's a government problem or societal or, this is where entrepreneurs come in and solve problems. I define an entrepreneur as a person, a guy or gal who finds a juicy problem and solves it. And so I think I don't know of that many challenges which cannot eventually be overcome. The end, sort of the end extension of abundance. There's a great book by a guy named Jeremy Rifkin called Zero Marginal Society. And in the final result, I don't know if this is 25 years from now or 50 years from now, but it's in that time horizon. I have a nanobot. I have a molecular robot that is able to rearrange atoms, and I have it in my hand. I let it borrow some atoms from my skin, and I make a few copies. I give Jag here a nanobot and a few to give to her friends. And then if you want something, you drop it in the soil and you say, can you make me an electric, Ferrari or something? And it gets the designs from the web, a open source copy. It might ask you for a kilogram of titanium or magnesium or whatever it needs. But this is the realization that everything is made of atoms, and at the end of the day, the cost of something is the raw materials, the information, and the energy for assembling it. So, I mean, that's the end extreme of abundance. In the interim, we've got politics, we've got challenges, we've got things to solve.
Okay, another question. Is the singularity near?
So Ray Kurzweil,
And maybe what it is, just for those who know.
yeah, Ray Kurzweil, who is a dear friend. I see him as a mentor of mine. We co-founded Singularity University. Let's see, do I have? Yeah, here it is. His book is right up over here. The Singularity is Near. It came out in 2006, and it was the book that inspired me to reach out to Ray to create Singularity University. And the concept of the singularity borrows the terminology from physics, and it's the notion that the speed of innovation is accelerating and constantly accelerating, and our ability to see what's next is going to become harder and harder and harder until we reach this effective event horizon where the speed is so fast that it is impossible to predict what comes next. And the prediction is that the singularity will occur in the 2040s, right? 20 odd years from now. And I don't know about you, but I can feel the speed at which things are moving, right? Where the amount of capital flowing into the global economy is massive. We've had more IPOs and more unicorns and more venture, this year than twice what it was last year. And the cost of tech is dropping precipitously. So it really is accelerating. So I do believe that we will hit something like the singularity. The implications of it are interesting. And is it going to change anything I do or you do? I don't think so. But we need to appreciate the extraordinary world we're in compared to bitching about it all the time. But anyway.
I completely agree with that. But at the same time, do you have some concerns when you're talking about these positive trends of technology getting cheaper, of these huge capital inflows into investing in these new ventures? And you cover in your book some of the possible global existential threats to accelerated exponential change. Do you worry at all about other kinds of maybe policy threats when we hear from some kind of extreme politicians, we need to have a wealth tax, that it's greed and it's people making too much money. I mean, all of the people that you talk about in your book aren't necessarily, like Elon Musk is an example. I mean, he's not taking his money and floating around the world in a yacht. He's pouring his capital back into these
breakthroughs. Yeah.
So do you?
I mean, so yeah. So listen, there's no question. Of course, I'm human, and I have my own set of holy shit, where'd that come from, right? Whether it's what's going on with Putin in Ukraine, or just sort of political manipulation of society. I describe myself as a libertarian capitalist, right? Which is I think the best way to make, to create wealth is by making the world a better place. And the process is uplifting everybody. Am I concerned about, nuclear weapons that we have? Of course. Am I concerned about AI? Not as much as others are. I think AI is one of the most important tools we're going to have for solving the world's problems. Am I concerned about it to some degree? Sure. Is there going to be a toddler phase in AI where it doesn't know how strong it is and it screws up? Perhaps. When I think about contextualizing the world, I think about it the following. I say, between 1900 and today, I think very few people wouldn't say that the world has gotten substantially better over the last 120 years. massive reduction in global poverty, increasing access to food, water, energy, healthcare, education, all of these things, right? But still, over that period of time, we had World War I and World War II and the Spanish flu and the Vietnam War and 50 to 100 million people needlessly dying from that. But yet, we've had this massive, these perturbations, but it's been up and to the right. Hopefully we don't screw ourselves in the process, but I think our ability to become a multi-planet species, our ability to deliver abundant, clean food, water, energy, healthcare, education, and respect the planet. I think all of these things are achievable. I come back to, it's really the John Galt figures. It's the individual who has the ability to enable that, make that happen.
So, and you have taken an active role in trying to encourage individuals to make that happen, to come up with competitive ideas through the XPRIZE. We talked a little bit about the Ansari XPRIZE. And again, I encourage people to watch the Draw My Life video that we did, because it was a moonshot, and it was also, though, a tale of perseverance when you'll see the story of how many no's he had to endure to get to his yes. But tell us a little bit more about some of the other XPRIZes. What are some of the current funded prizes that have you most excited? What are some of the challenges you're thinking about tackling in the future?
Love it. Happy to. So some of the active prizes right now, we have a prize called Feeding the Next Billion. We're asking teams to create at scale fish and chicken from either stem cells, so these are cellular agriculture, or plant-based. And this is a competition that is really about hitting not only cost and production figures, but where it has to actually taste better than the original product. So, as we're creating abundance on the planet, more people are getting wealth. They're desiring a much higher level of higher protein. And we can't continue to just grow more pigs and cows and chickens, or demolish the oceans, which we've gotten rid of 90% of the large fish out there. So we need a better way to do it. And so reinventing how we produce food, I think is very real. And I think we can make food products that are healthier, taste better, and are lower cost. We don't need to give up on those. So that's going on. We have an XPRIZE active right now called the Avatar XPRIZE. And this is building a robotic avatar that, if I have my robotic avatar there in your living room, Jag, I can beam into it, and I feel like I'm there. I can reach out and shake your hand or give you a hug, and you feel like I'm there. And it's sort of, as a user, I'm putting on a VR helmet and a haptic suit, and I'm delocalizing myself, if you would. So that's ongoing. Some of the prizes working on right now, I mentioned this $101 million prize for age reversal. So last year, one of the active prizes right now we just launched is a $100 million prize that Elon funded for gigaton carbon removal, asking teams to basically demonstrate at the multi-megaton level tech that can extract carbon. And we're open to all different models: direct air capture, mineralization, ocean, whatever it might be, but it has to be scalable to the gigaton level. And so we have 1,200 teams competing for that. About a year ago or so, I started a conversation with another Atlas Society Award winner, who you know and love well, Chip Wilson. And Chip is the anchor funder of our next prize, which is a $101 million age reversal XPRIZE. And so he wanted it to be bigger than Elon's $100 million prize. So,
Yeah, I was
so it's
wondering about
101.
that.
Yeah, so he's kicked in half of the money, and I'm raising the other half right now. You know, super excited about that. Working on a wildfire detection and extinction prize.
Oh,
A prize to detect a wildfire at the moment of ignition and put it out within 10 minutes, right? While avoiding a barbecue grill or you know, a Boy Scout, Girl Scout campfire. And then another prize working on is a coral reef restoration prize, because it's a mess out there. So those are some of the prizes. Have some other big, bold, crazy prizes I'm excited about. But it's like, you know, I like to think of it as the Neiman Marcus catalog for billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are the biggest problems that need solving, and can we inspire people to pursue them?
Well, as someone who lives amid the mountains of Malibu and whose house burned down because of one of these fires, and once again, you know, the government solutions are not going to, at least here, are not going to save your house. So I'll be watching that prize very keenly. What about energy? You know, I mean, there's kind of the carbon capture, but John Galt's perpetual.
So
energy.
you have no idea how prophetic your question is. I'll mention this, but everyone has to keep it secret.
This is not being watched by, you know, anybody.
All right, so it turns out back in the 1980s, there was a very famous set of experiments called the Fleischmann and Pons experiments for 0-point energy or cold fusion. And it was the front page of the New York Times, and the price of palladium skyrocketed, and it was low energy nuclear reactions were another way of saying it. And when the experiments by Fleischmann and Pons were not replicated, they were discredited, and no one pursued it. No one followed it because there was this stigma associated with low energy nuclear reactions. Well, it was picked up by a group and funded. The research was funded within Google, inspired by a particular group of Googlers. I'm not sure, I'm at liberty to say who. And they published in Nature magazine a series of articles basically saying, actually, we think this is very viable, and there's a there to be had. And what's going on is there is a government program to begin funding that research, and we're in very serious considerations right now with another group about a very large, for lack of a better term, cold fusion XPRIZE. And this would be the closest thing to John Galt's, you know, energy machine. But imagine being able to extract an almost unlimited amount of energy from the ether of space. Yeah.
That would be a game changer in so many ways, environmentally, politically, economically. So we will be watching. Well, we're just about coming up to the top. I had many more questions, but really, you know, it's endless. So I really want to recommend that everybody check out Peter's books, check out Abundance 360. Peter, any final thoughts of things that are on your mind that we didn't get to?
I don't know. I think I want people to have a sense of absolute excitement about the world we're living in, that this is the most extraordinary time ever to be alive. The only time more exciting than today is maybe tomorrow. And, you know, we tend to idealize the past. And, you know, if you were going to trade life with the billionaires, the robber barons 100 years ago, it would suck. You know, I mean, despite the wealth you had, you know, the things we take for granted today would be miraculous for them. And so in a world in which you have access to all of the computational power, all the knowledge, access to experts globally with the click of a mouse, access to more capital than ever before, the question is, what do you want to do with it? What do you want to do with your life? What is it that would inspire you and would make the world a better place? And I think at the end of the day, that's the most important message I can deliver. You can make a dent in the universe, and we all should.
I think that's such an important message, particularly you see so many people who are pessimistic and feel that things are on the wrong track, and not to minimize things that are not going well. I always like to say that to be objective, one must have perspective. And
Yes.
I think that means to also take into account all the good things that we have going for us and the trends for better yet to come. So thank you, Peter.
My pleasure, Jag.
Okay.
Good to see you, and looking forward to more conversations with you and the society.
Excellent. All right. I will be following up with you.